Hello! Welcome to the Flute 360 podcast, where we incorporate a panoramic view of flute-related topics. I am your host, Heidi K. Begay, and this is episode 161, an interview with Maron Khoury. Before we dive into today's content, I want to direct your attention to two discount savings. The first discount is applicable to Elizabeth Talbert's book, Applied Flute Practice Technique. Enjoy a 20% discount when you use your Flute 360 code today. This code is active from now until May 7th, 2021. Check out her website at talbertflute.com. And the second code can be utilized towards two books through Price Publications. Enjoy a 10% savings when you use your Flute 360 code at checkout towards the books Book of Solos by Maron Khoury and Book of Arias by Marie Tachuet. Check out their website at bookofsolos.com. Enjoy! Hi, Maron.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
So you're from the Galilee area, correct?
I am. I'm from a very small... I tell people I'm from Nazareth, but I'm not from Nazareth. I'm like an hour north of Nazareth. I'm from a very beautiful part of Israel. A lot of people that, watch Israel on the news have probably seen a lot of conflict and everything. Where I am from, there is none of that. It's very peaceful. Everybody lives together. We grew up in a very just beautiful environment. Everybody lives together. And, my parents loved music, so they taught all of us music. And I have a funny story of how I started playing the flute. We all studied at the same conservatory. And one day, the conservatory's director comes and he offers one of us to study an instrument for free. They were trying to start a woodwind band. And one of my brothers already played saxophone. And they're like, Maroon, why don't you take a year? They were running a special, they were letting people study a year free of lessons for an instrument as long as it was an instrument you could play in a woodwind marching band.
Okay.
And so that's how I picked the flute.
Wow.
Yeah, this is very random. Yeah.
I love that story.
Thanks. And my parents really invested a lot in us. So my last year before I came to the States, I was 12, and my parents would drive all the way down to Tel Aviv, once a week for my weekly lessons. It was a 2.5-hour trip down and 2.5-hour back up.
Wow.
It was Eyal Nabar, who was the associate principal flute of the Israel Philharmonic. He was amazing. He was he taught me discipline. We worked a lot on sound, technique, but it was very interesting. When I moved to America, you just, you focus on the piece, and of course you do exercises and all of that. But with my teachers here in Israel, the hour was divided into 6 sections.
Wow.
So we started with long tones, and then we did exercises, and then we did etudes, and then you did your piece, and in the very end, they'll play a duet with you or something.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was a very interesting approach.
Yeah.
So I'll always cherish that part. When my brother is a violin player. He was studying at UCLA at the time, and I went to visit him. And I think I got a scholarship for Idlewild Arts Academy to study with Sarah Andon. And that's how I stayed. It was a very last minute kind of thing. I got a scholarship in August, and I stayed for September. It was very strange. Is moving from Israel to the U.S. I moved when I was a teenager. I was I started my 9th grade over there. It was very different. I felt very homesick all the time. I wasn't quite surrounded by a lot of family. So I left like Israel very early on,
Yeah.
you know, like I started in ninth grade over there. So I never felt what's it like to be a classical musician around here.
Hmm.
But then my older brother did.
Okay.
And, and according to him, it was very, very difficult. It was very hard
Wow.
because, you know, it's not really a language that people could understand or relate to. Even though, like, there is a huge violin summer camp, like, just like 20 minutes away from us. It's called Keshet Elon. It's a really big deal. Many big names have done it, like David Garrett, the violinist, and Zuckerman. All Zuckerman actually lives not far from us.
Oh, wow.
But I know, like, I went to Curtis, and I have some violinist friends that have done that festival. But in my village, it's just so disconnected. Like, people know now there is a lot of awareness. And I played for like 10 years at the Met.
Yeah.
And which is amazing. I only got the position at the age of 20, and I was the youngest ever. But then I only made my debut like 3 years ago.
Wow.
Or it may have been 4 at this point. But then even the hall was packed, and there were like kids playing all around as I played, as I was sweating. And it was something so new. Like, I went up and like I did an interview. Yeah, I played some Middle Eastern piece for the whole entire thing. Like, I played 2 different concerts. And yeah, I still remember the day when I won my audition. People came, people found out about it here. Of course, over there it's like a big deal. And my brother, who lived close to me in Philadelphia at the time, he knew what it was.
Yeah.
But then here, people thought I won a flute, or or like a grant, or like I got into a school, study something. It was very weird.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, that's what it was like.
That's no way.
But interestingly enough, like, I have colleagues who had similar experiences.
Interesting.
Like that. Yeah. I mean, you would think everybody would come from backgrounds where they went through intensive studies. Like in Italy, for example, like every conductor that I've spoken to, they had to go through many years of, music studies. Like, they have to do a composition degree, and like, a lot of them are pianists already. But then some of us, it's just radically different.
Speaking of which, you're a pianist too, correct?
I am. Yeah. Not a great one. At this point, I only like try to compose, and I play my compositions only.
Okay.
I'm curious, how do you know that?
Oh, your biography.
Oh, yeah. It's in there. Okay, cool.
You're like, what else is in there?
I think I did well. Like, the last years that I practiced, I was already like practicing Chopin etudes.
Wow.
So I did pretty well.
Yeah.
But then, we talked, a lot of musicians have piano background. And it's different for many people. So at the Met, like, I found out my flute colleagues also played. Some people played guitar, I've ran into flute players that were so advanced that they could like just sight read anything on piano. No, seriously, yeah, that was like back in my high school days.
Wow.
Wow.
And
But I love, at this point, I only like write. I try to like write small pieces. It kind of keeps me entertained. Yeah, it kind of got the curiosity of my back when I went to Curtis, my last 2 years. People like have taken interest.
Oh, cool.
Like, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, and that was fun. I should maybe I try to get back to it here and there. It's just it is time consuming. I try to avoid it. we have a great instrument. Everything is kind of like has been prepared for us.
I love that. We do have a great instrument.
And I noticed, that was kind of one of your questions.
Yeah.
What did you learn in the whole process?
Yeah.
Of editing the book.
Yeah.
And first off, this book, shall we talk about it? Right?
Yeah. I would love to talk about your book of solos.
Look at that. Isn't it beautiful?
It is beautiful.
Everything in this one book.
Yeah.
I mean, what's not in this book?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at the pieces.
Yeah. I was leafing through it as preparing for the interview, and the standard, repertoire is there.
I mean, even my publisher had held it like this for me over the computer. And it was like, I cannot believe this book. It's heavy. So, and on my most recent trip, I came to Israel. I didn't take any piece with me. This is the first time. Like usually I, take 5-10 pieces with me. Yeah. All I needed was this.
Wow.
I mean, this is 30 of the standards. Every piece in there was a piece I've played back in school for my lessons that I've used for recitals, for my weekly lessons with Afrikaner. And as a professional, this is a great tool for people to have, this book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all some of the most major rep just in this one book. And I don't know if it's part of everybody's rep. For me, it's like, this is the standard. This is the rep that I practice regularly. And like the Reinecke and the Mozarts, all the French repertoire, which I love a lot. And, the great thing I learned through the editing process of this book, I've gone so much back and forth. And, but I learned how unique we are as flute players, I would say. Yes. Yeah. Because, we all have different DNA, but then I never thought it would come across in our flute playing. Okay. Some pieces, I heard every piece, like I heard multiple recordings of every piece in this book. And everybody just had a different perspective.
Interesting.
Everybody had their own unique, different sparkle that, some people breathed in certain spots, some people didn't, that was more or less the same. But people had a unique thing to bring. Like one piece was the Sonata Appassionata by Carl Gellert.
Yes.
There were many recordings, recording of professionals, recording of, some people who were students, just many of them. And at some point, I just had to stop listening because I was just editing the book. But people had so many perspectives, and they were almost so creative. One recording I remember was, I heard my teacher had a recording of it. It was beautiful. I agreed with everything that was done. And, but then, for example, like I heard Amy Porter's recording, which was also up there. Gorgeous, really, such a unique perspective too. And of course there were other recordings that I've heard. And of course, in the end, like I had to figure out I had to I think there might have been like a wrong note I fixed in the score itself. But then, you almost like have to be creative as a flute player, like with the interpretation. But the one thing I learned is, we all have like a different thing to bring in. And I think this is one thing in the music that we play is it can be kind of misleading in that, it is a written piece, but we have, we all have to be creative in what we bring into it.
Yes.
And that's kind of one thing I learned.
No, I love that perspective, and I really respect that answer.
What I'm really trying to get onto is there really was no right or wrong.
I see.
as long as you kind of play it convincingly,
Yes.
and it comes across what you're trying to do. Like you could play the whole piece in one tempo, and then you get to a section where it says, "Oh, play it faster," and then you could play it just a little bit faster, or you could go really, really fast.
Yeah.
Okay, but then either one that you do, if you play it convincingly, then it kind of gets across.
Yeah.
You know. So, for example, in that piece, the Cargular Sonata Appassionato, that's one thing I heard. You know, people took their time there or here. So, you know, some people stretched out certain spots, and you know, it sounded beautiful. You know, the way people played it, and there were so many times I was tempted to like adjust a certain interpretation or add a different mark in some pieces because it sounded so great. But in the end, you know, I had to stick with what was original. And maybe in some other pieces, I had to stick to what I thought was right.
I love that. As a follow-up question, I'm kind of curious. You probably know all the standard rep in our repertoire because you're a virtuoso and you've done so much in your career. So when a new piece gets on your stand and say it's something completely modern, it's new. And say there's a few recordings out there, do you first go to the piece with no outside influence and you're just going in it with your own ideas and, you know, working with the piece just one-on-one? Or are you going to those recordings and hearing those interpretations and then coming to your own ideas and adding them in later? I'm just curious, like your process with something like that.
That's a great question. I think out of all my years that I've played the flute, my very first year at Curtis was the one year I learned a lot of music.
Okay.
And the most music in a short period of time. It was like specifically during the first 4 months. I was just constantly going to the library back and forth. And the way I used to do it is I would just pull out pieces out of the shelf and like go to the practice room and read them.
Okay.
Without any influence, even like without having heard some. Some of them I've known. I've listened to a lot of music before I've gone to Curtis, obviously, a lot of flute music. And I would just like try and predict, what it is about. Like I would try and predict what the accompaniment would be like. I would try and kind of develop insights to it before I've heard the whole thing. Obviously, it's different. Like, when I joined the opera, this was like 6 years later at this point. I grew up a little bit more, so I matured a little bit more. And, I bought, by then it was kind of like, I have to hear every opera and I have to know every note and I have to know exactly where I come in.
Wow.
And I have to, I just have to know how this line fits into the whole big picture.
Okay.
It's interesting. Like one piece that I played the run off, it came like during my very first season at the Met. It was called Armida and it had this piccolo part. And I played it. I did a good job on it. But then the next year they did a repeat run of it again. And I went to hear it, and I think it was about the Crusaders, something. And I associated with the piccolo sound with the military, like
yeah,
all that, like French Revolution. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And but so maybe a bad example.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, to understand like what context something is in.
Yeah.
That's something that comes over again and again.
Sure.
especially, well, especially since I made my debut back here when I played the recital in my hometown.
Yeah.
Like, I think as musicians, we're entrusted with the task of understanding what our audience wants to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we want to play the Mozart flute concerto, which we love.
Yeah.
But sometimes we may play it at a place where they want to hear, Prokofiev or Poulenc Sonata.
Yeah.
And I think, understanding how like certain music fits in a certain certain context.
Yeah.
Is kind of important to me. Now, I've spun around in circles, but I didn't really answer the question.
No,
Did I?
No, you did. I loved it all.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I think the one last thought I would have about that is, well, I haven't been learning a whole lot of, well, you know how it is. Like a lot of pieces just come across like, you're listening to like YouTube and here comes a new piece you didn't know. So you're like, okay, let me learn that piece.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
And I think like the flute standard has gone up so much.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't be surprised if in like 10, 20 years, people would be just like kind of, if like beatboxing was like a part of our normal technique.
Yeah.
And everybody had to learn it.
Yeah.
Or some people now are like playing violin repertoire constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I have. And, 10 years ago, if I played it back in my practice room at Curtis, it may have been, criticized, or it may have felt strange, but now I didn't really feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just played like Saint-Saëns Rondo Capriccioso for violin.
Yeah.
And I posted it on my Facebook page. No problem.
Nice.
All the violin players watching.
Yeah. Neat. There's so many gold nuggets in what you just said. Going back to the word convincing, there's so many different interpretations, right? And that word resonates with me so much because one of my very last teachers actually was in Thessaloniki, Greece. And Navarre would say, that's great. I love where you're breathing. I see what you're doing with that phrase, but you haven't sold me. I'm like, why not? And she's like, well, you just didn't do it convincingly enough. And she's like, if you convinced me a little bit more, then you could have sold me on your interpretation. I necessarily wouldn't have gone that way, but if you sold it, then I would be convinced. And so that word really resonates with me because when she said that, I thought, oh, wow. And she just opened up a whole, new world for me in that sense of delivery. And the other gold nugget that I love is just kind of seeing and predicting in a way of these extended techniques coming in and saying, oh, beatboxing might be our new like key clicks or flutter tongue, or that's interesting to think of it that way. I think you're right. Or maybe, look at what some artists are doing with writing their own lyrics and then playing the flute and then singing and then going back to flute. Things like that could be added into our standard practice too.
I tried to get into multiphonics when I was a student.
Yeah.
It didn't really go that well, but I feel like that's one neglected, kind of, how did you put it, golden nugget?
Yeah.
That may be like one of our pillars and flute playing, because I do hear it improves the sound a lot. And, one of my good friends recently has, signed up for a masterclass with Robert Dick. And she said she enjoyed it very much. She said, there are all these pieces they have gone through, like they were very interesting. It was good music and all of that. And so, hey.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
when I spoke to Robert Dick in his 4 episodes, I think it was 79, 80, 81, 82, he just blew my mind. And he was just saying things like, this extended technique actually helps with our fundamentals. And so multiphonics would fit into that. And that's his niche. And that's what he, strives for the classically trained flutist to really dive into that language, because it can really open up our sound to be more resonant and, etc. But yeah, beatboxing is going to be like a thing.
That's not in my book, though.
Yeah, no.
Never.
Boots and cats.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
There'll be new words for it.
Yeah, right. I love it.
Oats and
yeah. So since we were talking about literature and extended techniques and all of that, I'm going to whip us back around to the book. Is there anything about the book, the process of putting it together, anything that you want to share in regards to the Book of Solos? I know we kind of went on a lovely tangent, which I love, because when these conversations start, you never know what rabbit hole you're going to go down to. But I just want to make sure that everything that you want to say about the book is said.
Sure. Yeah. So, can I hold it?
Yes, please.
I feel like if I hold it, the answers will magically come out.
Nice.
I'm just kidding. Sorry. There are many approaches I've taken into this book. So, when I first started working on it, like I said, I was listening to many different recordings of every single piece, and really was trying to nail down, the things I liked about every person's interpretation. And I've gone that route, and, I almost drove myself crazy, too crazy. In the end, I did want to offer my personal insight. I did want, the best. I wanted it to be like a learning experience, for flute players. And I feel like, but then what I ended up doing is like, I dove so much away from the original that I thought, wait, this may not be the best. So I ended up erasing a lot of marks.
Okay.
And what I decided to do is really take an original approach, and I figured I heard so many in the end, to reiterate, like what you said about your teacher, that you have really sold it, on certain ideas. I heard that same line in my lessons too. Like, you haven't really convinced me about what you're trying to do with this. And I figured the best thing would be to, leave most of the pieces with original marks. And, I hope, people can come up with their own personal, unique, interpretations for each piece. Take, for example, the first page of the foray. Yeah. The slow part when it gets to the high E and it starts doing, the high E trill, and, you're supposed to crescendo through the chromatic scale up to the high E. And that part is supposed to be, a forte maybe. Well, it's not really marked in the original. If you look at the original, it's just marked piano.
Sure.
And so, I initially had a huge crescendo through the chromatics, but then I decided, I should respect the composer's marks.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's what I did. But I'm pretty sure that if the next time I perform it, I'm definitely gonna go up to a 40 on that passage.
Yeah.
So original. That's what I've gone with in this book. And the other thing is, I used my last year when I was at Curtis, I wrote some really nice cadenzas for the Mozart in G, Mozart Concerto in G. I never wrote cadenzas for the Mozart in D because I always used Don John's cadenza.
Yes.
Cadenzas. And what I ended up doing is I did use my own set of cadenzas for the Mozart in G.
Okay.
But then for the Mozart in D, I did use the Don Juan's cadenzas for the first and third movement.
Okay.
But then for the second, since the Don Juan one is like really short, I offered my cadenza, which, I kind of like. It's kind of difficult for a slow movement. But I think, people would find a lot of great ideas in it. Yeah, I mean, I would love if people use my cadenzas, but I think maybe, everybody should get to maybe play around with their own cadenzas. Like everyone should, yeah. There is 3 pieces by John Sebastian Bach. In this book. There's the Bach Suite, and there's the Bach Partita, and there is the Bach Sonata in C major. Well, the Bach Sonata in C major is a piece, it's probably one of my favorites. I've played it with harp. I've played it for my graduation recital. I play it, it's usually the first piece that comes to mind when I do a recital. So I decided to make my own interpretation of it.
Nice.
So out of everything in the book, that's the only piece that will have my interpretation. I also I marked the Bach suite to my liking with the articulations. And I didn't, mark it as much dynamically as much as I did the sonata. But then the partita, it's a piece that sometimes is played for auditions and college auditions. I kind of wanted to leave that one alone. And so I hope in the Bach partita, people will come up with their own markings for it. Even like articulation wise, we all have our own preference. So some people like to play it on a wooden flute, maybe. Yeah. And I heard a few of those recordings. It's it's just a different tone, different articulation, maybe. And yeah, there is, obviously there is the Reinecke Concerto, Reinecke Sonata. Again, I looked at the original manuscript. I took what I liked.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very interesting. The Reinecke actually was difficult to edit. The second movement of the Reinecke was all over the place. So how it kind of starts, so that whole passage, it repeats 3 times throughout the movement.
Yeah.
But then the same passage was just written differently all 3 times. So what I did is, I tried to make it the same. It was kind of so it's the same passage 3 different times, but then in one passage, the same note is an 8th note. In the next passage, it's a 16th note. And then in the last one, it's yeah, I fixed it to my liking.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's about most of what I've done. It's funny. My publisher left this at the end of the book. Notes.
Yes.
People that want to leave it. And
where they can write their own Mozart cadenza.
There we go. Well, I should have had them add at least another page in that case. But then there is, oh my God. Yeah, I haven't looked through a lot of this book since I've gotten back to Israel. But there are so many pieces. There's the Freischütz Fantasy. There is the Carmen Fantasy. Well, Carnival of Venice, all the virtuoso pieces. Carnival of Venice is a piece I have to learn for this book. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I somehow never played that one.
Well, you're busy playing a huge set of repertoire for orchestras and operas and everything, so I can't blame you.
Yeah, well, this book definitely was my opera during the pandemic. And yeah, but the greatest thing, this is the only time I didn't pack many books. And the one thing I'm trying to do with this book is I'm going to try and put out all my, a recording for each piece in this book.
Mm.
And I've started. So far, I have 8 of them on YouTube.
Mm.
I think I have like the Ghani. I have like 2 different recordings of the Carmen. And then obviously the Bach in C major. I have the Vidor suite up there. The Reinecke Sonata I'm working on, and the Schubert will be on soon. The Ghani, and I'm working them one by one.
Wow.
And I hope to offer my own perspective on them.
Neat. That's really smart to have all of those recordings available through YouTube. A nice companion to the book.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, for for a student that wants to apply for college with this, they can have just a unique perspective. I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure there are other great recordings out there, but I hope to offer like original insight to it, and that's the whole approach.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you for showing us those insights and everything, and what a valuable resource to our community, especially for students who need to hear an amazing, solid perspective from such a solid, phenomenal flutist. I mean, there are so many recordings out there. You have to be very careful because the internet's like this double-edged sword, right? Anyone can upload a recording, but is it standard or is it reputable to listen to, especially while you're growing as a musician? And so having a resource like you to offer insights and everything that you just mentioned is priceless. I mean, I can't even wrap my head around that. I mean, the high schoolers and the college students out there, I mean, growing up, we had access to internet kind of, but not to this degree, right? And so young flutists are very lucky to have such great resources at their disposal.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and all the accompaniments will be out, I think, sometime this summer.
Okay.
Too.
Nice.
Yeah. The one additional piece we decided to include was the Debussy Afternoon de Faune, which is obviously a very important piece for us flute players. I had to play it on almost every edition that I've done. And I think that's an important piece for flutists to have and, to play through, especially, people who are going to music school right now, to college, finishing up. Afternoon de Faune is just one of the classics. And I think it's one of those pieces that will always be around. I got to play it personally twice.
Wow.
On first flute. It was in the Curtis Orchestra, and gosh, my heart never beat it any faster than yeah, like in Kimmel Center.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still remember so many like tone colors all through. It's not captured as much in the piano, with the piano.
Yeah.
All this between like the winds and the strings and just really beautiful sounds. Anyway, I made a recording of that recently.
Nice.
With one of my colleagues at the Met. Brian Magrin is his name. And I think we're going to put that on soon. Too. I haven't, I'm holding some, they'll be uploaded together.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Speaking of recordings, I heard your recent recital that you gave. I don't know if it was 2020 or 2021 that you uploaded. It was with a harpist. Beautiful.
With a really long one.
Yes, it was like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, gorgeous. Oh my gosh. I love the repertoire that you chose. I loved your interpretation of Ian Clarke's piece. Your sound just floats with the harp. It was so magical. Thank you for uploading that.
Thank you. Did you notice that I played 2 different, flutes?
Yeah.
You did?
I did. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Was there a reason to that? Or did your first flute cut out? Or
so I played for the middle 3 pieces of the piano.
Okay, yes.
I played my Yamaha, but then for the pieces with the harp, I played the flute I use in the orchestra.
Okay.
The Haynes, yeah. And this particular Haynes has this like very beautiful quality to it. It's not, especially the upper register, it's not like strong. By the way, like this Yamaha was the flute I won my edition on.
Okay.
So it's very powerful. It's like a very strong sound, just really big, and you can like, especially in technical passages, like the mechanism is so strong, you can just like play through it.
Wow.
Pretty well. But then that flute, that other instrument, the Haynes, it has this beautiful like shimmer to it. It's even the intonation like seems so smooth. You don't have to try.
Yeah.
And with the harpist, when I played the Haynes with her, it was like, yeah, definitely. But you noticed.
I did.
I'm very impressed that you know.
Oh, thank you. No, I loved it. And I was kind of joking with saying, oh, did your first flute, have a technical error or something? You never know if like a spring pops, but you could tell it was intentional because just the timbres that you were seeking. And so it made sense per the repertoire that you were performing.
Yeah, and I think that's one part of playing with the orchestra. You really start looking hard for those tone colors, right?
Yeah.
It's different. I mean, well, it also depends on the space you practice in too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you play in a very echoey place, then maybe naturally you need that soften. But yeah, I have to say, like, I keep looking for it, and I feel like I come close to like finding the sound that I need, but it's really a work in progress. You don't really ever find, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there is like no such thing as a perfect sound. I don't know. No. Well, I mean, many people have like a really beautiful sound, but I think it's one of the tasks we are, that are tasked with as flute players is, to find. Yeah, this is a very interesting thing. I've played next to many sets of players in the orchestra, but then especially like, for example, with my first colleagues at the Met Opera, like Stefan Hoshkultsan and like Denis Boryakov, they didn't use golden instruments. And somehow they just didn't really think it particularly worked. Even though they were playing these magical solos and they were playing it so well. You would think like gold, flutes have this rich quality to them, and it's true. But then I'm not sure. They said maybe it was like a bit too heavy, a bit too warm.
Okay.
It was very interesting. Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm hoping, I'm saving up to get a golden flute soon, I hope.
Nice.
But it's interesting with this Haynes. Like, I tried it alongside so many other Haynes flutes, like 6 others.
Okay.
And this was the one I stood out. That stood out, and I don't know why. It just had this nice. Definitely works with harp.
Yeah, I agree. So if there's anybody who wants to be in touch with you, are you active on social media? Do you prefer like Facebook versus Instagram? Just kind of want to throw that out there.
I would love if people follow. So anybody that, wants to friend request me, they're welcome.
Yeah.
Because I always like post videos of, flute playing. A few weeks ago, I played with Liang Wang, who is the principal oboist of the New York Philharmonic. And that was kind of fun. I like to post pieces. Like I recorded the DUTU Sonatine recently. I was going to post that. I am still going to post that. But, I like to put things up. So if people, they're more than welcome, like people want to follow. I also have a fan page. It's different.
Okay. That too.
Yeah.
Where they can and follow you there.
Yeah. But this book, though, Before I continue, there is an online teaching platform.
Okay.
It's called eConnect 123. It just launched like recently, and they're very proactive about doing master classes.
Okay.
And so I'm doing the first one on Saturday. I'm very, very excited about. I'll be teaching from this very angle. I'm super excited about it, and I haven't, I've done like few master classes before, but not during the pandemic. I've been like practicing, and but then it's very likely that they will do like future master classes. So this platform is like an online, people can sign up for a lesson if they would like. It's again, like they're very proactive, and it's very straightforward. If people are interested, they can definitely sign up. But as for this book, it's actually like hard to find. It can be found at bookofsolos.com. They have the website bookofsolos.com, and then they also have a Facebook page, which is excellent. People can leave feedbacks. We are actually very open to feedbacks at this point.
Nice.
I personally would love to hear some. And, like I said, like I've written blurbs at the very end for every piece. And some of them, I try to offer what I think of how I think certain pieces should be played.
Yeah.
Again, like I would love to know what people think of this book. And I don't know if there is a coupon if Sam like is giving you.
Yeah, he's actually offering 10% discount off of both yours and Marie Tashue's book from now until May 18th. And if you use your Flute 360 code, you'll receive 10% off. So that is valid for the next couple weeks. So definitely take advantage of that super generous offer from Sam.
You said it's Flute 360?
Yes, so capitalize Flute and then 360, no spaces.
Okay, I might use that coupon myself because I need a few more copies.
Nice.
I kind of hope it's valid for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. I only, my publisher only gave me 5 copies. So.
Okay.
But I want to get a few more,
Nice.
Maybe. I'm sure.
There you go. Use the Flute 360 code.
I didn't. So when he sent me the book, it came with this beautiful silver envelope.
Yes.
That's something I'm excited about too.
It was very sparkly. When I opened up my package and I saw the silver envelope, I was like, ooh, very iridescent and something I wasn't expecting. So it catches the eye.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I have a feeling I'm going to take this book to all my travels. It's just the one book I need.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. And that is a valid point. Like when I went off before the pandemic, I went to Greece, Bulgaria, and Romania. And the first thought was, oh my gosh, I can only really bring like a suitcase worth of clothes and my 1 gig bag. How am I going to fit all the music that I need in my little gig bag? And this would have been super to have at that time because I was frantically like scanning music as much as I could in my iPad. And something like this would have been super just because it's standard rep and you just put that in and you're done.
Well, think about it in another way. If you are like, I live in a studio in New York City, right? Oh. So how much space could one have? And like,
true.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Another.
And you start, and you buy each individual piece. It's going to be way more than the $30-$40 where your price is, or where your book is priced. So that too.
I think so. And, without being so partial, that's my book and all. I'm actually happy with the way it turned out.
Nice.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it to my students in the future. But I think this is like the great time to get the book because think about it this way. It's summer, 30 pieces, that seems like a nice summer project.
Nice.
And obviously, it took me a few months to finish, but I think I'm gonna start this whole process again with this book, or maybe I'll start, maybe I'll pick another 30 pieces and do them.
Yeah.
That'll be a lot.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna stick with those for a while. I'm gonna perfect them.
Nice. Cool.
But I can't stress this enough. We as flute players, we do have like something unique to offer. We do have our own perspective. Like last season, before the season stopped and the pandemic hit, we played Akhenaten at the Met, and Akhenaten by Philip Glass, and people came from all over the place. And the one thing I didn't know is, I may need to fact check this, but I heard he is a flutist, or he played the flute at some point.
Huh.
Philip Glass.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Huh. Should I have known that? Is that a well-known fact?
I'm not I'm not entirely sure, but
okay.
Well, he wrote operas.
Yeah.
So we certainly have something to offer.
Yeah. Yep.
Decided, I hope. And recently, like also before the pandemic started, we played like a flute recital at the New York Flute Club. It's great. I got to meet like a lot of people who played the flute, who worked in different fields. Like some people worked in finance, some people worked in like software. I have another friend who like works in banking, and I've stayed in touch with a few, and they all have, obviously they're in love with the flute, and they like playing it, but then it adds so much to their life, as a whole, even their professional life. And so, I think this book is like to all flute players. That's my goal. And if somebody is a professional and they hold it and they think this is great, I want to hold it, then great. If somebody is just starting out, there are pieces in this book for everyone. I hope people will enjoy it. I really do.
And people are going to love it. I enjoyed it, if that means anything to you. I really enjoyed it, and I'm so thankful that Sam reached out, and I'm so thankful that you and Marie have taken time out of your busy schedule to sit with me and to talk about these wonderful additions to our catalog. And we cannot thank you enough.
Well, Heidi, I hope this is one of, the first interview. Maybe like another future one.
Yes.
But I enjoyed talking to you as well. I'm sorry about the,
No, you're fine.
And, well, on a final personal note, this has been a difficult time for musicians.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, and actors, and this period of time, it's obviously strange for everyone, and I hope we all like see an end to it soon. We are, but I almost feel like we're gonna come back stronger than we were before.
Yeah.
Maybe we needed this. No, we did not need this period of time, but maybe we'll use it to just like cool down a bit.
Yeah.
And get back to like stronger, new beginnings. Like more focused. I think people are really like gonna give their best, and I have this feeling like it's gonna be a new beginning for everybody. And it bad as this all been, it's almost been like a healing period of time for all of us.
I agree.
And
from ashes comes beauty, right? There's always a silver lining, even in tragedies. And so one thing that I anticipate is, us being apart for a year and a half, and not having those in-live concerts and in-person concerts, and missing that when we come back. For me, at least, I can only speak for me, but I can almost imagine that people, like audience members and musicians alike, on stage or off stage, we're just going to soak in that music making that much more. and not take it for granted. Not that we did before, but when you get into a routine and you're like, oh yeah, going to see the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, that's the orchestra down the street from me. And, not that I took it for granted, but when it becomes part of that routine and it just, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, what's the big deal? Not that there wasn't magic, but now being apart from that and away from it for so long and then coming back to it, just like, oh, you just soak it in. And I think you're right. We're going to soak it in differently. We're going to hear things differently and really not take those precious moments for granted. Thank you again, and we'll be in touch.
My great pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you, honey.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Good night.
Let's talk about flute.